The Galactic Federation's detection center hummed with activity as Chief Observer Zara Vek stared at her monitoring screens, her crystalline appendages twitching with confusion. The anomaly had appeared 3 days ago, a single ship approaching Federation space from an unexplored sector. What made it truly bizarre was its method of travel. "Commander Thex," she called out, her voice resonating through the chamber. The readings remain consistent. The vessel is walking through space. Commander Thex, a towering figure with iridescent scales, moved to her station. His 6 eyes narrowed at the display. "Explain." "It's not using any known form of propulsion. No quantum drive signature, no fold space distortion, no hyperspace tunnel. It's as if..." She paused, searching for the right words, as if it's simply deciding where it wants to be, and then being there. The ship's approach had thrown the entire Federation detection grid into chaos. Their most advanced sensors could barely track its progress, and when they did, the data made no sense. It would appear in one sector, then another, without crossing the space between. "What of its origin?" Thex asked, mandibles clicking with concern. "A planet called Earth, sir. The species calls themselves humans. Our long-range scans indicate they achieved spaceflight relatively recently, perhaps 3 centuries ago." Zora brought up the historical data. They appeared to be progressing normally, colonizing their solar system, until about 50 years ago. Then they just stopped. Stopped? Yes, sir. All observable expansions ceased. We thought they had reached their technological limit. Until now. The main display showed the approaching vessel. It was elegant in its simplicity. A sleek, silvery craft about 500 meters long. No visible weapons, no shield generators, nothing that would indicate it was a threat. And yet, "Send the report to the High Council," Thex ordered. "They need to know about this." In the High Council chamber, representatives from the Federation's 1,000-member species debated the situation with growing concern. High Counselor Rixa, an ancient being of pure energy contained within a crystalline matrix, called for order. "Our options are limited," she stated. "This vessel will reach our borders in 48 hours. We must decide how to respond." "Send the defense fleet," shouted one representative. "No species sends a single ship for first contact, unless it's a trap. Or unless they're so advanced they don't need more than one," countered another, their tentacles waving anxiously. The debate was interrupted by a new alert. The human ship had broadcast a message. In perfect Federation standard. "Greetings, Galactic Federation. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth ship Pathfinder. We come in peace and request diplomatic contact. We apologize for sending only one vessel. We didn't want to appear threatening. Though I suppose, given the circumstances, that plan may have backfired somewhat." The message was delivered with a touch of humor that left the council chamber in stunned silence. The casual acknowledgement of their concerns was disturbing enough. But how did they know Federation standard? "High Counselor," Zora's voice came through the chamber's comm system. "The ship, it stopped, just outside our border. And," she hesitated, "it's changing." On the main display, the Pathfinder began to shift. Its silvery surface rippled like liquid mercury, and the ship transformed before their eyes. What had been a sleek vessel became an ornate work of art, its hull now decorated with intricate patterns that seemed to tell a story. Humanity's story, from their first steps on their moon to their current state. A gesture of openness. Captain Chen's voice came again. "We thought you might appreciate a visual representation of our journey. We await your response." High Counselor Rix's crystalline form pulsed with light as she considered the situation. A species that could manipulate matter at will, that could traverse space without conventional propulsion, that knew their language and customs, and yet chose to approach with humility and artistic diplomacy. "Prepare a diplomatic reception," she ordered. "And let's be very careful about our assumptions. I have a feeling we're about to learn that the galaxy is far more interesting than we thought." As the Federation scrambled to respond, The Pathfinder waited patiently at their border, its hull still telling humanity's story in shifting patterns of light and shadow. And in her command chair, Captain Sarah Chen smiled slightly. First contact was always tricky, but sometimes the best way to appear non-threatening was to be so far advanced that threats became unnecessary. The real question wasn't why humans had sent only one ship. The question was, why would they need more? The Federation's Grand Reception Hall had never felt so tense. Despite its soaring crystal arches and floating light gardens, the space crackled with nervous energy as the assembled diplomats waited for the human delegation. High Counselor Rixa had ordered the Federation's most impressive display of military might. 500 warships arranged in a ceremonial formation outside the station. It was meant to be both welcoming and subtly intimidating. However, as Captain Sarah Chen's image appeared in the center of the hall via hologram, her slight smile suggested she found the display more amusing than impressive. "Your welcoming committee is quite spectacular," she said, her holographic form perfectly rendered. "Though I should mention, you're currently only seeing about 10% of our ship." The assembled diplomats murmured in confusion. Commander Thex stepped forward, his scales shifting color with concern. "Impossible. Our scans clearly show your vessel's dimensions." "Ah, yes. About that." Sarah's hologram gestured, and suddenly the view outside the station's windows changed. The Pathfinder seemed to unfold, layers of reality peeling back like pages in a book. What had appeared to be a 500-meter vessel expanded into a massive structure that dwarfed the Federation fleet. But it wasn't just bigger. It existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, parts of it folding through spaces that shouldn't exist. "We find it more polite to present a modest appearance initially," Sarah explained as gasps echoed through the hall. "The full configuration of our ships tends to cause discomfort in species who haven't encountered dimensional engineering before." Zaravek's crystalline form vibrated with a mixture of fear and fascination. How many crew members do you have aboard?" "Just me, actually." Sarah's hologram walked through the hall, examining the architecture with genuine interest. "Well, me and Araya, the ship's consciousness. Though I suppose saying just is a bit misleading, since I'm simultaneously in about 50 different sections of the ship right now, thanks to temporal multiplication." The Federation representatives tried to process this. A ship that was its own crew, a captain who could exist in multiple times at once, and technology that treated the fundamental laws of physics as polite suggestions rather than rules. "Perhaps," High Counselor Rixa said carefully, "we should discuss why you've chosen to make contact now." Sarah's expression grew serious. "Yes, we should. But first," she turned to face a seemingly empty corner of the hall. "Would the 3 cloaked observation drones mind decloaking? It's rather difficult to have an honest conversation when one side is attempting surveillance." The Federation security chief's face flushed deep purple with embarrassment as 3 hidden drones shimmered into visibility. Sarah waved at them cheerfully. "Don't worry about it. We'd have done the same thing. In fact," she paused, then laughed. "Well, I suppose there's no harm in telling you now. We've had observation posts in every major Federation installation for the past 50 years. We needed to understand you before making contact." The hall erupted in shocked exclamations. 50 years of perfect infiltration, and they'd never detected a thing. "You've been watching us?" Thex demanded. "Why?" "Protection, primarily," Sarah replied. "There are things out there that make our little dimensional tricks look like child's play. We've been keeping them away from Federation space while you developed. But now," she created a holographic display of her own, showing something that made the assembled diplomats step back in horror. It was vast, dark, and hungry, a tear in reality itself that consumed everything in its path. And it was heading straight for Federation space. "We call it the Void Cascade," Sarah said quietly. "It's already devoured 3 galaxies and other dimensional planes. We've been fighting it alone for decades, but this time," she looked around the hall, meeting the eyes of each species representative. This time, we're going to need help. Your help. Our help. Zara asked incredulously. What could we possibly offer against something like that when you're so far beyond us? Sarah smiled, but this time there was no amusement in it, only hope and determination. You'd be surprised. You see, there's something your civilizations have that humanity lost long ago in our rush to master the universe. She gestured at the elaborate architecture around them, the art, the light gardens. You still know how to create beauty just for beauty's sake. You still dream. You still wonder. And against something like the Void Cascade, that might make all the difference. The hall fell silent as the implications sank in. They weren't being conquered or patronized. They were being asked to join a fight for survival by a species that could have simply taken what they wanted. So, Sarah said, spreading her hands in a universal gesture of openness, shall we discuss how to save the galaxy together? Outside, the Pathfinder continued its impossible existence, a testament to how far humanity had come. But perhaps its captain thought it was time to remember how far they still had to go, and what they might have left behind along the way. The demonstration chamber aboard the Pathfinder defied everything the Federation delegation thought they knew about reality. Commander Thex, Zara Vek, and High Counselor Rixo watched in stunned silence as Captain Chen manipulated what appeared to be a miniature galaxy in her hands. This is how the Void Cascade operates, Sarah explained, her fingers tracing dark patterns through the stellar hologram. It doesn't just consume matter and energy. It devours possibility itself. Every dream, every potential future, every might have been, gone. The tiny galaxy in her hands dimmed, stars winking out one by one, until only darkness remained. But what truly terrified the Federation representatives wasn't the demonstration. It was the casual way Sarah reached into what they'd thought was a hologram and pulled out one of the dead stars, holding it like a cold, dark marble. That's not a projection, is it? Zara asked, her crystalline form vibrating with comprehension. No, Sarah confirmed. This is a real galaxy, just very, very small. We learned to fold space so completely that size became negotiable. She returned the dead star to the miniature galaxy, which she then slipped into her pocket like it was nothing more remarkable than a spare credit chip. Why show us this? Thex demanded, his scales shifting between patterns of fear and fascination. Why reveal such power? Sarah's expression softened. Because you need to understand what we're up against, and why we need you. She gestured, and the chamber transformed. They were suddenly standing in what appeared to be an Earth park, complete with grass beneath their feet and a warm sun overhead. This is what we lost, she said quietly. When humanity mastered the fundamental forces of the universe, when we learned to step sideways through dimensions and treat galaxies like toys, we forgot how to simply be. How to create art that serves no purpose beyond beauty. How to dream without immediately trying to calculate the quantum probability of that dream becoming reality. She knelt and picked a flower, a simple blue thing with 5 petals. Your civilizations still have this. You still build gardens and space stations just because they're beautiful. You still tell stories that aren't quantum-verified simulations of possible futures. You still dream. And this matters because Rix's energy form pulsed with curiosity. Because the Void Cascade isn't just a physical threat, it's conceptual. It destroys possibility itself. And we've discovered that the strongest defense against it isn't our technology, but the ability to imagine new possibilities faster than it can devour them. Sarah stood, still holding the flower. We can provide the means to fight it. The ships, the weapons, the dimensional shields. But we need you to provide something we've lost. The ability to see the universe not just as it is, but as it could be. The chamber shifted again, returning to its original state. But the flower in Sarah's hand remained real. An impossible blend of their reality and what had seemed to be mere simulation. That's why we sent one ship, she continued. Not because we didn't need more, but because we needed to approach you as equals, not conquerors. We need partners who can teach us how to dream again. Zara moved closer to examine the flower. You've been protecting us all this time, haven't you? Not just watching. Sarah nodded. There have been incursions, things from beyond the dimensional barriers. We dealt with them quietly. We didn't want to disturb your development. Like parents protecting children, Fex said, a hint of bitterness in his voice. No, Sarah corrected firmly. Like someone protecting a precious resource they knew they'd need someday. Your civilization's creativity, your capacity for wonder, these aren't primitive traits to be outgrown. They're essential tools for survival in a universe far stranger than anyone imagined. She held out the flower to them. So, what do you say? Will you help us remember how to see beauty in simplicity? How to dream without calculating the odds? How to believe in possibilities that defy quantum analysis? The Federation representatives looked at each other, then at the flower. A simple thing that represented everything their civilization still had, and everything humanity had sacrificed in its rise to power. Besides, Sarah added with a small smile, if we fail, it won't matter how advanced any of us are. The void cascade will consume everything. Dreams, reality, and all points in between. The chamber fell silent save for the soft hum of the ship's impossible engines, as 3 representatives of 1,000 species considered an offer from humanity that was both more and less than anyone had expected. The Federation Council chamber was in an uproar. Representatives from 1,000 species argued as displays showed the void cascade's advance. It had consumed another galaxy in a parallel dimension, and its hunger was growing. We cannot simply trust them, shouted the Marakian delegate, their crystalline form flashing with agitation. These humans appear from nowhere, with power beyond comprehension, and expect us to believe they need our help. Sarah Chen stood calmly in the center of the chaos, watching. She hadn't moved or spoken for over an hour, letting them work through their fears and doubts. Beside her, Zaravek noticed something odd about the human captain's shadow. It seemed to shift and change, sometimes stretching in impossible directions. Suddenly, every light in the chamber went dark. When they returned a moment later, the room had changed. Or rather, reality had changed around them. They were still in the council chamber, but also somewhere else. Through the station's windows, they could see their own galaxy from the outside, as if they'd been transported millions of light years away in an instant. And they could see something else. The void cascade, no longer a theoretical threat, but a visible nightmare, consuming another galaxy in real time. This isn't a projection. Sarah finally spoke. This is happening right now, in a parallel dimension very close to ours. Watch. The assembled delegates could only stare in horror as the massive entity devoured stars, planets, and possibility itself. Where it passed, reality simply ceased to be, leaving behind nothing, not even darkness. Now, Sarah continued, watch this. She gestured, and suddenly they could see something else. Thousands of human ships, arranged in complex geometric patterns around the dying galaxy. They were fighting the void cascade, but not with conventional weapons. Each ship seemed to be generating new realities, creating possibilities faster than the entity could consume them. We can slow it down, Sarah explained. We can fight it with technology. But we can't stop it. Not alone. Because we've lost something crucial. The ability to imagine outcomes that our quantum computers say are impossible. She turned to face the council. You want proof that we need you. Watch carefully. The scene shifted again. Now they could see a single Federation world. A small, unremarkable planet that most of them wouldn't have given a second thought. But on this world, a child was drawing a picture. This happened 3 days ago, Sarah said softly. Watch what the child creates. The drawing was simple, stick figures and basic shapes. But as they watched, something extraordinary happened. The child's imagination, their pure act of creation, generated a ripple in reality. It was tiny, almost imperceptible, But it was there, a new possibility being born, one that no computer could have predicted. That, Sarah pointed, is what we've lost. The ability to create something truly new, truly unexpected. Our technology can replicate anything, but we can no longer innovate in the way you can. We can't dream the impossible dreams that generate new realities. The chamber returned to normal, but the memory of what they'd seen remained. Sarah looked around at the stunned faces. The void cascade doesn't just eat matter and energy, it devours possibility itself. And the only defense against that is the ability to create new possibilities faster than it can consume them. We have the tools to fight it. But you, she smiled, you have the imagination to defeat it. High Counselor Rixa floated forward. You could have shown us this from the beginning. Why wait? Because you needed to come to terms with who we are first, Sarah replied. And because we needed to be sure you understood. This isn't about superior technology or power. This is about survival. All of us together, or none of us at all. The chamber was quiet now, the earlier arguments forgotten. They had seen the truth, not just about the threat they faced, but about why humanity had chosen to approach them as they had. One ship, one captain, one simple message. We may have mastered the universe, but you remember how to dream. And in the end, that might make all the difference. The day the void cascade reached their galaxy, it meant something unprecedented, a defense built from both human technology and Federation creativity. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Pathfinder, watching as impossible became reality. Thousands of human ships formed the outer barrier, their dimensional engines warping space itself. But it was what lay behind them that truly mattered. A network of Federation worlds, each contributing something unique to their shared defense. Status report, Sarah called out, her voice carrying across realities to the Federation Command Center. The artistic resonance networks are at full power, Zaravek responded. Her crystalline form had been modified with human tech, allowing her to process information across multiple dimensions. Every child's drawing, every song, every dance, they're all generating new possibility streams. The void cascade loomed before them, larger than anything they'd faced before. It was darkness given form, hunger made manifest, a tear in reality that consumed everything in its path. But this time, it faced something new. On 1,000 worlds, Federation citizens weren't running or hiding. They were creating. Children drew pictures of worlds that never were. Musicians played songs that shouldn't exist. Poets wrote verses about impossible things. And with each act of creation, reality itself grew stronger. It's working, Commander Thex reported, his scales shimmering with excitement. The possibility generation rate is exceeding the cascade's consumption rate by 3.7%. Sarah smiled. The Federation had taken humanity's technology and done something they'd never imagined, turned it into an amplifier for creativity itself. Every human ship now carried a core of Federation dreamers, their imaginations enhanced and projected by technology they barely understood. The void cascade struck their first line of defense and hesitated. For the first time in its existence, it encountered something it couldn't simply consume. Reality wasn't just defending itself, it was growing, expanding, becoming more. Now, Sarah commanded, everyone, create something new, something impossible, something that's never existed before. Across the galaxy, 1 trillion minds responded. Artists painted with colors that couldn't exist. Writers wrote stories that rewrote the laws of physics. Musicians played instruments that changed the frequency of reality itself. The Pathfinder's engines hummed as Sarah added her own contribution. She imagined a universe where the void cascade had never existed, had never needed to exist. And through the ship's dimensional cores, that imagination took form. Reality shuddered. The void cascade, faced with more possibility than it could consume, began to fold in on itself. It wasn't just being defeated, it was being transformed. Keep going, Sarah urged. Don't stop creating. The darkness that had consumed 3 galaxies began to change. Where it had been an absence, now it became a presence. Where it had devoured possibility, now it began to generate it. In the end, it wasn't human technology or Federation creativity alone that won the day. It was both, working together, each making the other stronger. The void cascade didn't die or disappear. Instead, it became something new, a source of infinite possibility, a wellspring of creation. As the transformed entity settled into its new form, Sarah looked around her bridge. Representatives from a dozen Federation species worked alongside her now, their combined abilities far greater than either humanity or the Federation could have achieved alone. "What now?" Zara asked, her crystalline form reflecting the light of newly born stars. Sarah gestured at the transformed cascade, now a shimmering aurora of pure possibility. "Now we learn from each other. Humanity remembers how to dream, and the Federation learns how to make those dreams real. Together." She paused, looking out at the galaxy they'd saved, and changed. After all, sending one ship was never about showing strength. It was about learning to trust, to share, to grow. And now, she smiled, now we have an entire universe of new possibilities to explore. The Pathfinder's engines hummed as reality settled into its new configuration. Humanity had brought the tools, but the Federation had brought the dreams. And together, they'd created something that had never existed before, a future where technology and imagination worked as one, where power and creativity danced in perfect balance. It turned out that one ship was exactly what they'd needed, not to save the galaxy, but to help it save itself.